הדובר הבא הוא פרופסור רוני מהאוניברסיטה החופשית של ברלין, אבל אני לא יכול להתאפק שלא לשאול על התעסוקה האיכותית, רוני, התעסוקה האיכותית מול, תעסוקה איכותית, האם באמת כאשר שוק העבודה מתרחב, האם יש סיכוי שיהיו משרות מספיק טובות, או שההתרחבות של שוק העבודה, בגלל שאנחנו מדברים על משרות יותר ויותר שוליות, בעצם יגרמו לכך שתופעת העובדים העניים תתרחב, שנדמה לי שזה מה שקרה במדינת ישראל. אז אני מזמין אותך לדבר. בבקשה.
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much. Maybe I try to answer that question later on. Because I've already talked quite a lot, I skipped these reductions. What I want to talk is about the interdependencies. Now, first of all, your introductory remark was, do we need a government? Do we need labor market policy? My view is, of course we need. Markets are not just. That's not what they are designed for. They are designed for allocative efficiency, but not to achieve justice. And therefore, we need the government to step in. And the main issue we have to deal here is that, on the one hand side, to make the labor market work, and that is to achieve the first objective, that is bring people back into employment, we must ensure that firms have an incentive to hire workers. And therefore, the focus must be on having labor costs that allow the firms to hire people. And there we come to the question in the low-wage sector. Now, Germany, with respect to service, is terrible. People are cleaning their roofs, unable to help themselves very much. They do all the gardening. If you go to the US, for example, you see that there are many firms providing these services, and people are happy to use these services. We don't have that, except for the shade economy. In order to design a policy which, what I pointed out in the end of my presentation, addresses both groups who are left behind, one first has to ask about who should pay for work. And we normally do not ask that question, and that also refers to saying something about the populistic view we observe in the US and in many European countries as well. Of course, these ugly capitalist firms should pay for it. That's what is always said. But honestly, in Germany, it's none of the automobile producers who pay a minimum wage. Their workers earn much more. These are the small firms. Most of the jobs who are affected by the introduction of the minimum wage were in firms with less than 10 employees. And there you can expect that the firm owner is also not the rich guy who can easily pay the money in order to do it. So firms should pay for work to the extent they benefit from work. And that's how they make their decisions. And in the long run, they will not hire people if the costs are higher than the benefits. And the benefits is, in the end, income. In addition, the society should pay for work to the extent that it is a possibility to reduce inequality. In my view, letting the society pay for work is the idea of solidarity with those left behind, while the idea of having firms pay for the low productivity workers is the idea of externalizing solidarity. That is, we demand firms to pay for the people irrespectively of whether they can afford it or not. And again, this brings me to two alternative ways. First of all, is a very costly way. This is the French minimum wage, which I mentioned beforehand. It's at the moment €9.76, so it's far beyond the German minimum wage, and it's one of the highest minimum wages in Europe, except for Luxembourg. But at least in the German debate, this is hardly known. The minimum wage is subsidized at a level of 26%. This is an employer subsidy paid to the firm. So that reduces the labor cost for the firms. And actually, the French government is very pragmatic about that. It says, we do that in order to avoid job losses, full stop. And then we have a phasing out of the minimum wage, so subsidy continues till a level of 160% of the minimum wage, which has adverse effects if you have a minimum wage increase. If you increase the wage, let's say by 10%, of course, those who exactly earn the minimum wage, there the labor costs increase by 10%. Those who earned an income which is exactly 10% above the old minimum wage, they don't suffer in the first place from the minimum wage increase, but this job is now more heavily subsidized. So it's a reduction in labor cost for these jobs above the minimum wage, and therefore we shouldn't be very much surprised to see that the French labor market does not provide any good empirical insights about whether the minimum wage destroys jobs or not, because it's linked to the subsidies. Except for the young workers. Most of them cluster on the minimum wage. And if you look at these, it's about education, of course, but it's also about the minimum wage, because they suffer from every wage increase we have. And in addition, the government pays an annual bill of roughly 25 billion euro per year just to avoid the potential job losses. The alternative is let the society pay, let's be solidaric. And this is my view and why I'm against the minimum wage. In Germany, low-wage earners normally do not pay any income tax because the income tax is not allowed, there's no tax on income allowed if the income is below subsistence level of income. But we have social security contribution, and there we have a proportional system. We pay social security contribution right from the first euro we earn, divided into employer and employee contribution rates. Now this drives a tax wedge of 33% between labor costs and net of tax wage income. Is it really a tax wage? Yes, it is. Because if you are unemployed, you get health insurance by the government. The moment you start to work, you have to pay for your own without receiving any additional income. Second, we have the equivalent principle in the pension scheme. So that is, if you pay in one additional euro, you're supposed to get one additional euro out of the pension schemes later on. That's not the case for those working poor. Because those working poor and with unstable labor market biographies, they hardly will get a pension above the subsistence level of income later on. So they are eligible for additional supplementary pension by the government. Now, if they pay into their own pension scheme, €1, the public transfer later on will be reduced by €1. So it's like a tax. So these people pay a tax by 40%. This is a tax the society burdens on the working poor. And I guess it's much better to alleviate the burden of the working poor. That would raise the net of wage income and therefore alleviates the income position without burdening the firms, that is, without rising the labor cost. We have the minimum wage, and politically there's no way out of the minimum wage. So we have to live with that. And my guess is when the first recession hits, we will move towards the French system. We will introduce wage subsidies. And then we might also differentiate between the East and the West, because then it's a positive discrimination of the East. And the Eastern are eager to get some type of positive discrimination in that respect, and the Länder will support that idea. And then we will have a very costly scheme like France, and make it even more easier for populists to argue that the old system supports all the firms by now even starting to pay employer subsidies. Thank you.